America is in grave danger, extremely vulnerable to black swan events that strike out of the blue, that throw the world into turmoil, and that raise the specter of even darker black swans still to come. Like the Russian invasion of Ukraine, decimating an independent democracy larger than Germany and the UK combined, reducing its cities to rubble, sending shockwaves through the global economy, or a massive future air attack on the independent democracy of Taiwan, igniting a new war in the South China Sea, spreading to the entire Pacific region, plunging East-West trade into turmoil. How much damage could just one of these black swans cause? For an answer, let's not forget the black swans that have struck our nation since the beginning of the new millennium. The black swan that attacked the very heart of our nation on 9/11 with great loss of life and treasure, setting off a chain reaction of events that have continued to ricochet through time. The US invasion of Iraq, the fall of Saddam Hussein, the rise of Al-Qaeda, the global spread of the Islamic State, and then billions of dollars in new money printing by the US Federal Reserve. Or the black swan that attacked the very heart of our economy. It wasn't September 11th, 2001. It was September 15th, 2008. The Lehman Brothers failure, again setting off a chain reaction of events that have continued to ricochet through time. America's deepest recession since the 1930s. America's largest bank failures and bailouts of all time. And then a massive wave of central bank money printing that was many times larger than anything we'd ever seen before. Or the black swan virus that suddenly burst onto the scene, spread rapidly around the globe, and mutated into even more contagious strains, transforming our cities into ghost towns, plunging financial markets into a tailspin, prompting governments to lurch from inaction to reaction, and then driving the Fed to unleash a tsunami of money printing that makes all prior money printing midges look tiny by comparison. I'm not here to frighten you. God knows there's enough fear in the world today. I'm here to give you the facts about the true threats to your wealth so you can find safety in an unsafe world. Now, maybe you're thinking that once the world calms down and global conflicts recede, the inflation and the economic turmoil will end too. If I were you, I would not bet on that either. Long before the latest black swan events, we already had all the ingredients of a serious crisis here in America. In fact, the seeds for this crisis were planted a long time ago, with more than 2 decades of Federal Reserve money printing, years of bad advice from Wall Street, dishonest ratings, and lies that lured millions of people into debt, that spurred millions of investors to throw caution to the wind, that drove nearly everyone to take unprecedented risks with their hard-earned money. If you find that hard to believe, I'll give you the evidence here. I'll show you why we believe thousands of companies and even many banks are unprepared for the next black swans. I'll tell you how we identified many of them who were already in deep trouble before this crisis began. So, before you and I part today, I will give you access to my family's and my company's most precious crisis investing guidance. And right now, the black swan events, along with the government's reaction to the black swans, are creating 3 threats to investors. Threat number 1 is the destruction of any decent interest you could possibly earn on your savings. Just look what the Federal Reserve has already done. In response to the first black swan of the millennium, the 9/11 attacks, Federal Reserve Chairman Greenspan drove the Fed's key interest rates down to 1%, gutting the yield of income investors. In response to the second black swan, the Lehman Brothers failure, the next Fed chairman, Ben Bernanke, drove rates down to 0, wiping out the yield of income investors. And in response to the third black swan, COVID-19, Fed Chairman Powell not only slammed interest rates down to zero, he kept them near zero for 2 full years, nearly obliterating people's income today and for years to come. What about rate hikes by the Federal Reserve? They're useless for income investors. Hey, what good is it to make 0.25% or 0.5% more when the inflation rate has surged by 4, 5, or 6 percentage points? What's the solution? In this session today, I'll tell you about an investment strategy that generates about $1,000 in extra income per week with 98% accuracy. And with double the investment, it could be about $2,000 per week. Threat number 2 is the rapid erosion of your principal by out-of-control inflation. This is no longer just a prediction. Inflation is already surging, and the rising tide of conflict in the world today can only make it worse. Not just wars in one country, not just wars in one region, but also trade wars, cyber wars, and massive supply chain disruptions all over the world. I know. The inflation we're seeing now is shocking. But what's even more shocking to me is that most people are still so complacent about the truly dangerous inflation that's rearing its ugly head today. They didn't live through the 1970s when folks waited in gas lines for long hours just to top off their tanks, when the value of supposedly ultra-safe treasury bonds plunged by more than half, and when the price of gold surged 2,324%. They didn't live through the inflation that gutted the economy of Brazil in the 1970s and Argentina in the 1980s, destroying the savings of millions of middle-class citizens, bankrupting their governments, prompting their leaders to confiscate their bank accounts, unleashing mass protests against inflation, and tearing apart the fabric of society. Nor does anyone dare think about the hyperinflation that wreaked havoc on the entire world, starting in Germany after World War I, creating the greatest avalanche of worthless paper money ever seen, and giving rise to the most dangerous dictator in the history of Western civilization. Hundreds of millions of Americans going about their daily business in America today are oblivious to the torrid past of inflation. Fewer still believe that anything vaguely similar might be possible today. They have not yet learned the lessons of history, and they don't yet see the handwriting on the wall. The consequence of complacency is catastrophe. The solution is investments that have historically demonstrated a consistent pattern of surging when inflation rises and skyrocketing when inflation surges. I'll offer you specific insights on our selection of some of the best in just a moment. But now let me tell you about threat number 3, a hidden crash. A crash in stocks that not long ago were the biggest, flashiest winners. A crash in stocks that investors piled into blindly last time around. I know, because my family and I have lived through market crashes that even predicted them ahead of time. The story begins with my father, Irving Weiss, who first went to work on Wall Street in the late 1920s as a customer's man, which nowadays they'd call a stockbroker. The market was unusually out of sync with the tough times that most working American families were experiencing. So when the Dow Jones Industrials kept going up and up in the first 10 months of 1929, my father didn't trust it. He didn't trust the disconnect between the great times on Wall Street and the tough times in the neighborhood where he lived. He didn't have many clients yet, just friends and family, but he told them to get the heck out of the market. In his office, the veteran stockbrokers laughed at him. Weiss is just a kid, they said. What does he know? And then came Black Monday, October 28, 1929. The market plunged the equivalent of about 4,500 points in the Dow Jones of today. Then on the next day, it plunged the equivalent of another 4,000 points. Suddenly, Irving was a hero, And suddenly the word got out that he was the only one who saw it coming. That's when he decided to do more, much more. He collected data on as many companies as he could. He put the numbers down on the large green sheets that bookkeepers used, spreadsheets actually, and he created a series of formulas that would later become the foundation of my company's computer models of today. Using his formulas, he identified the companies that he thought were the riskiest. He called them dogs of the Dow. In the early 1930s, Dad also used his formula to identify the strongest companies in the market, like gold mining companies, for example. Years later, he wrote, "In those days, very few people were buying the gold, which was ironic because you could buy it so easily. All my clients and I had to do was to go to our bank, walk up to the teller window, and ask for $20 gold coins. And that's what we did." Among all the companies on his spreadsheet, guess which ones got the best grades? It was the mining shares. So he figured he couldn't go wrong if he concentrated on the companies with his highest grades, like Homestake Mining Company and Dome Mines Limited. Most investors today have no idea how large the profits were in gold shares in the 1930s. Homestake rose from $65 per share to $130 and change in 1931. Then it doubled and doubled again to more than $540 a share in 1936. In the meantime, Homestake's dividends also doubled, redoubled, and doubled again, reaching $56 per share in 1935. Think about that. The dividends earned in 1 year alone almost paid back the entire purchase price of the stock. Dome, another great gold producer, did even better. You could have bought Dome for as little as $6 a share and sold them for $61 a share. A person who put $10,000 into Dome could have walked away with more than $100,000, excluding dividends. So, is it possible that history will repeat itself? Everything I see happening today tells me that the answer is yes. And it all comes back to one of the last predictions my father made before he died. He warned that someday inflation will again rear its ugly head, and ultimately the stock market will crash again. He didn't say exactly when it might happen, but he did tell me how it would happen. Inflation will be running amok, and the crisis will be so severe, all the government's money printing and all the government spending will still not be enough to put things back together again. The entire monetary system will be in danger. Eventually, the country will recover, but it will take years, many years, for that to happen. Well, now that crisis has begun, and now we can see clearly how all the threats could soon converge into one time and place. The utter destruction of any interest you could safely earn on your money, the rapid erosion of your principal with raging inflation, and the growing risk that stocks in your portfolio could also be gutted, not to mention wars and the threat of new wars. This is a very solemn moment in history, a time for prayer, but also a time for action. And a few minutes from now, I will give you our roadmap. 7 steps to take starting immediately. But first, let me tell you the rest of my family story. 1/2 century ago, I founded my own company, Weiss Ratings, to help Americans of all walks of life keep their money safe in good times and in bad times as well. We transformed my father's spreadsheets and formulas into a massive database on more than 56,000 companies and investments, stocks, ETFs, mutual funds, banks, insurance companies, even thousands of digital assets. And today, that entire database has been modernized by a team of analysts, mathematicians, and data scientists, using our advanced computer models to identify the weakest and the strongest every day of the year. That's how we warned in advance about the dot-com bust of the early 2000s. and the great debt crisis of 2008. But we don't just issue warnings. We also issue ratings, the Weiss ratings. We provide a letter grade from A to E on nearly every stock, every ETF, every mutual fund, and every financial institution in America. With those ratings, we name the stocks that are likely to fall the most. We name the banks that are most likely to go bankrupt. Before the debt crisis of 2008, for example, we warned about nearly every major institution that failed or was bailed out, and we did so months in advance. We named Lehman Brothers as a candidate for failure 182 days before it went bankrupt. We named Fannie Mae over 1 year in advance, Citibank, Wachovia Bank, and Washington Mutual Bank 51 days in advance, General Motors 5 months in advance, and many more. Among the 465 banks that failed during and after the debt crisis, we warned consumers about 464. Yes, we missed one, but that was only because the bank had committed fraud. It kept its true data hidden from everyone. These kinds of on-target warnings prompted Worth magazine to say that our record is so good compared with that of our competitors, consumers need look no further. And the New York Times to say we were the first to see the dangers and say so unambiguously. Barron's wrote, Weiss is the leader in identifying vulnerable companies. Chris Ruddy, founder of Newsmax and a close friend of former President Trump, said, our prediction of the current economic crisis is uncanny. And Louis Rukeyser of Wall Street Week wrote that we provide a tougher service. And I want to tell you that the service he was referring to includes a very important list of companies that, based on our ratings, are in the gravest danger. We call it the endangered list. And I must warn you, our endangered list is very long. And that's the best evidence I can give you that the threat to your wealth could be deep and long-lasting. Even before this phase of the crisis began, our endangered list included over 7,000 stocks, ETFs, and mutual funds, more than 1,000 banks and credit unions with insufficient capital to withstand an ordinary recession, and another 3,000 which were unprepared for the next black swans. And now, I'm sad to say, our endangered list is getting even longer. So the probability is high, and getting higher, that if you're an average investor, many of your stocks and mutual funds, and even your bank, could be on the endangered list. Not all companies are in bad financial shape, mind you. There are many strong ones, and I'll tell you about those in a moment. But whether good or bad, you just need to know. And you need to know now, before the next black swans strike America. Plus, there's one more thing I want you to know. Until now, we charged a fee for folks to access our ratings. You see, we're not like Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, because when they issue a rating on a company, they get paid by the company for the rating. Their ratings are bought and paid for by the rated companies. Many smart people think that's a serious conflict of interest, and I agree. Plus, it's also one of the reasons why millions of people who followed their ratings lost so much money in the great debt crisis of 2008. We never do business that way. We have never taken a dime and never will take a dime from the companies we rate. Our only source of revenues is the end user of our information. Average people who want to get safe and make some money too. But because of this crisis, I don't want any barriers between our ratings and your safety. So for the duration of the crisis, I propose to give you access to all of our ratings lists for free. Look, I know that the vast majority of Americans will fail to heed my warnings and fail to get ready for the next black swans. But I sincerely hope, for you and your family's sake, that you are not one of them. The precautions required to protect yourself from the next black swans are not difficult. And even if the storm they create turns out to be less severe than we fear, The worst that will happen is that you'll sleep better at night and potentially make some good money too. Because there is some good news. You have some time to prepare, but not much time. Here are the 7 steps I recommend you begin taking immediately to protect yourself and your loved ones from the storm I see coming. Step 1, avoid the endangered stocks. If you hold stocks or stock mutual funds, in your regular brokerage account, in your 401k or in your IRA, start selling the ones we've identified as the most vulnerable to the next black swans. In the market decline during the Great Debt Crisis, for example, investors could have used our ratings to avoid 385 stocks that fell 90% or more in value. And on average, the stocks that were on our endangered list when the crisis began lost more than 2/3 of their value. This time around, the most vulnerable are different names in different sectors, but you can find out exactly which ones they are simply by checking our special bonus report, the Weiss Ratings Endangered List. In it, I give you a complete list of all the stocks, ETFs, and mutual funds with our lowest ratings, investments I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. Step 2, learn how to earn $1,000 in income per week. By income, I mean cash flow into your brokerage account. But imagine an investment strategy that has generated about $1,000 in extra cash flow almost every Friday. That could add up to $50,000 per year. And with double the investment, it could add up to $100,000 per year. Imagine also a success rate of 98% on your trades. Well, you don't have to just imagine anymore, because we feel it's an appropriate solution to overcome the terrible low yields that continue to plague the financial world. Our Safe Money Report editor, Mike Larson, explains exactly how in his special report, Instant Income Revealed. Step 3, own mankind's most traditional crisis hedge, gold. Since my family began recommending $20 gold coins in the early 1930s, the price of gold has risen 9,595%. Better yet, if some of my father's clients bought one of my father's favorite gold coins at the time, the St. Gaudens $20 gold coin, and their family kept it in good condition until today, they could have seen it appreciate to an estimated $42,000, from $20 to $42,000. That's a gain of 206,288%. Now, I'm not saying you can make that much money in gold this time around, nor am I expecting you to wait 90 years for that to happen. But in more recent years, since our monthly newsletter began recommending gold bullion coins and bars, gold has risen by 459%. Step 4, diversify your inflation protection with digital hedges. Now, you might think I'm talking about Bitcoin, but I'm not. I'm talking about newer digital assets that our specialists say could someday be used as new kinds of currency all over the world. Remember my father's prediction that the entire monetary system will be in danger? Well, that day is no longer decades away. I believe it's a lot nearer than most people think, and the threat is growing by the day. So let me first tell you something about our experience with Bitcoin. Then I'll tell you about the newer digital assets that have even better potential. One of our analysts first started buying Bitcoin in 2012, when it was selling for $11 per coin, and he held them to this day, giving him a gain of 420,991%. Think about that. In less than 1 decade, he has seen twice the gains holding Bitcoin than my dad's clients in the 1930s could have seen in 9 decades holding one of the rarest $20 gold coins. That's double the results in less than 1/9 the time. Today, we predict that 3 newer digital assets could be an even better solution to the global monetary crisis we see ahead. When our lead expert first recommended one of these newer digital assets, it was selling for 6 cents. It then surged to $1.31, a gain of 2,083%. in less than 3 years. And at current price levels, we think it's just getting started. I predicted it could go to $10, $100, even $1,000 in the future. Now, not every digital asset that he recommended has gone up that much. To give you some context, among the trades he recommended closing in 2021 or holding through the end of 2021, 3 were losers with an average loss of 30%, and 19 were winners with an average gain of 689%. But that was still far better than Bitcoin, which in turn rose more than almost any other asset class. How do we identify the best digital assets? Well, in addition to our team of analysts who produce our stock ratings, we also have a separate team of analysts producing our digital asset ratings. The data and formulas are very different, but as with stocks, we also issue grades from A to E, and we cover nearly every active digital asset in the world today. In today's world of massive money printing, out of control inflation, and wars, using our scientific, data-driven approach to selecting the best of the best is absolutely essential. And I give you all the details in our special bonus report, the 3 best digital assets for the next monetary crisis. In this report, I name 3 unique digital assets that we believe have the best chance of being leaders of the monetary system of the future. Plus, I share with you my own personal investment plan on how to allocate funds between gold bullion and digital assets. It's not a fixed portfolio. It varies from time to time depending on a key indicator I also tell you about in the 3 best digital assets for the next monetary crisis. Step 5, own companies that have historically done very well in times of high inflation. I'm referring to companies that mine natural resources and that even mine Bitcoin, or that build their business around some of the most powerful inflation hedges of this era. We named them in our special report the world's leading resource companies. Step 6, invest in the Weiss ratings top 10. These are not just the top 10 among 100 stocks, not even the top 10 among 1,000. They are the 10 stocks that our ratings have identified as the best among the 10,000 different stocks we rate and review every day. In other words, they're in the top 0.1%. So let me repeat what I said before. Our ratings are not only designed to help you avoid the big losers, they're also designed to help you identify the biggest winners. We select these stocks not only because they're strong today, but also because we believe they will be strong in the face of future black swans. Among them are companies that can do the most to help people in inflationary times and to even benefit directly from inflation. We named them in our special report the Weiss Ratings Top 10, the cream of the crop among the 10,000 stocks we rate. No one can guarantee the future performance of any list of stocks, of course, and that's also true for our top 10 stocks today. But I can tell you how stocks meeting the same criteria have performed in the past. Go back to the first trading day of 2012, for example. If investors bought our January 2012 list of top 10 stocks at that time and simply held them until we issued a sell rating on the stock, they would have seen a total return of 112% on New Market Corp, 135% on Intel Corp, 144% on Magellan Midstream Partners, 334% on Cantel Medical Corp, 446% on Humana Inc., 833% on Market Access Holdings, and 886% on MasterCard Inc. Not all 10 were triple-digit winners. One made 81%, and 2 returned only 25% and 18%, respectively. But I'm proud to say that on average, the Weiss Ratings top 10 stocks returned 413%. That's enough to grow an initial $100,000 investment into $513,000. And I'm even prouder to say that none of the stocks on the list were losers. Today, of course, the world has changed a lot. And naturally, the list has also changed a lot. It has different stocks in different sectors. But we named them in Weiss Ratings Top 10, the cream of the crop among the 10,000 stocks we rate. We give you their ticker symbols. We explain why we've picked them, and we provide instructions on our strategy for buying them. Step 7, stay up to date with our 56,000 different ratings. One of the free services we're providing in this crisis is premium access to all our ratings. They not only cover 10,000 stocks, but also 2,400 exchange-traded funds, ETFs, 26,000 mutual funds, and 1,600 cryptocurrencies. Plus, you not only get full access to all of our investment ratings, but you also get full access to all of our safety ratings on 4,800 banks, 5,000 credit unions, and 3,600 insurance companies. That gives you the power to select at will and at any time the ones to avoid and the ones to favor for the best combination of relative safety and profit potential, both when the market soars and when the market sinks. At a time like this, a powerful offense is your best defense. Building up substantial profits that you can convert into cash reserves is the best way to ensure your family's safety and comfort. You don't need to have a lot of experience as an investor, and you don't even need to use exotic investment vehicles. In a moment, I'll show you how to download and access the bonus reports instantly, so you can start using them just a few minutes from now. The Weiss Ratings Endangered List. Instant income revealed. The Weiss Guide to Prudent Gold and Silver Investing. The 3 best digital assets for the next monetary crisis. The world's leading resource companies. The Weiss Ratings Top 10, the cream of the crop among the 10,000 stocks we rate. Plus, premium access to the 56,000 Weiss ratings. You get all of this right now. All I ask is that you apply for a 1-year subscription to our flagship investment letter, Safe Money Report, for just a few cents per day. You can cancel and receive a full refund at any time during your 12 months with us, including up to the very last day of your subscription. And even if you decide to cancel, you can keep all of the guides, all the reports and ratings information that you download today, or when you download at any time during the course of the year. Fortunately, a small minority of investors will escape the dangers and even use this crisis to build substantial wealth. And if you act promptly on the simple steps I've given you today, you could be one of them. You cannot rely on the government or anyone else to come to the rescue. Only you can protect yourself and your family. Only you can take your destiny into your own hands to create a better world for yourself. I trust this time we've spent together has already given you some of the information you need to make that possible. And I look forward to welcoming you on board to guide you the rest of the way. All the details are on the page I'll take you to right now. Good luck and God bless.